We all hear that word, inflation, and we immediately think it's just about prices going up. But what if that's only scratching the surface? What if the real story of inflation is actually about the promises we all make to each other? And what happens when those promises start to break?
I mean, you know the feeling, right? You go to the grocery store, you fill up the car, you look at the bills, and it just feels like your money doesn't stretch as far as it did last year or even last month. It's this nagging, universal frustration.
But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if inflation isn't really a number on a spreadsheet? What if it's actually a story about something much more human? A story about belief and about that fragile, invisible promise that we call money.
To really get this, we have to back up and ask a really basic question. What is money, anyway? And the answer, it's probably not what you think. It's definitely not just paper and metal.
Think about it. A dollar bill, a 5-pound note, on its own, it's worthless. It's just paper. Its power comes from one place and one place only: our collective agreement. It's a shared story that we all decide to believe in, the story that this piece of paper will be worth something tomorrow. It's a contract built entirely on faith.
And that right there is the crux of it. Mervyn King, the former head of the Bank of England, put it perfectly. Money was created to solve the problem of trust between me and you. But in doing that, it created a new, much bigger problem. Can we trust the institution that creates the money in the first place?
And listen, this isn't some new 21st century dilemma. Not at all. In fact, if you look back, you could argue that the entire history of money is really just a long history of governments breaking that trust. This pattern just keeps popping up again and again, all through history. We see it way back in the 3rd century with the Romans messing with their coins. We see it in 11th and 14th century China with some of the first experiments in paper money. The temptation for the people in charge to break that promise, well, it seems to be timeless.
So back in the 3rd century, Roman emperors were desperate for cash. So what did they do? They started secretly mixing cheaper metals, like copper, into their silver coins. But people weren't stupid. They could feel the coins were lighter, they could see they looked different, and just like that, trust vanished. Prices for essentials, like wheat, just exploded. The promise of the currency was literally diluted.
Now let's fast forward 1,000 years to 14th century China. The Ming Dynasty creates the world's first national paper currency. One of the notes even had this incredibly bold promise printed right on it: to circulate forever. But the government just couldn't resist the urge to print more of them to pay its bills, and soon enough, that eternal promise was completely worthless. The whole system just collapsed.
So we've seen trust get diluted, and we've seen it get overprinted. But what happens when that trust doesn't just crack, but completely evaporates? Well, that's when you get one of the most frightening economic events imaginable: hyperinflation.
And hyperinflation isn't just inflation that's really high. No, it's something else entirely. It's a psychological phenomenon. It's that moment when an entire country collectively loses all faith in its own money. It becomes a game of hot potato. You try to get rid of it the absolute second it touches your hands. And this quote just nails the mindset. Suddenly, a loaf of bread or a can of beans becomes a safer place to keep your wealth than the actual cash in your bank account. Physical things feel more real than money, all because the promise of money has been shattered. And the speed is just terrifying. In Zimbabwe back in October 2007, the leaked monthly inflation rate was 14,840%. That means prices were basically doubling every single day. Just think about that. Your entire life savings could be wiped out in a matter of weeks. There are stories from 1920s Germany where workers demanded to be paid twice a day. Their families would literally wait at the factory gates, grab the cash, and run to the stores to buy anything they could before the prices changed again that same afternoon. All of that frantic spending, it's what economists call the velocity of money, but really it was just driven by pure, raw fear. And of course, it just threw gasoline on the fire, pushing prices up even faster. Okay, so Rome, China, Germany, that might all feel like ancient history. But this whole confidence game, this issue of breaking the monetary promise, is absolutely timeless. In our modern world, that promise can be broken not just by printing too much, but by twisting the truth itself, which brings us to the incredible story of one statistician in Argentina. This is Graciela Bavacqua. In the mid-2000s, her job was to calculate Argentina's official inflation rate. She was a by-the-book career statistician. Her job was simple: report the facts. But the Argentinian government, well, they had other plans. And what happened next was like a playbook for how to destroy trust.
First, government officials started publicly questioning the official numbers she was putting out. Then, they demanded she change how she calculated them. Remove a few items here, round some numbers down there. When she refused to compromise the integrity of her data, they pressured her, and then they just fired her. And the final step? The government started publishing its own totally fake inflation numbers. They systematically tore down public trust.
So after all these stories, from ancient Rome to modern Argentina, where does that leave us? When we see prices going up all around us, what are we really looking at? It's so much more than just economics. Inflation is the sound of a promise being broken. It's the measure of a society's faith in its own currency, just fraying at the edges. Whether that currency is being diluted, or overprinted, or just plain lied about, the result is always the same. The shared story we all tell ourselves about money starts to fall apart.
And that leaves us with a huge question for our own time. Today, money is more abstract than ever. It's just digital code, it's complex financial systems we can't even see. And that makes the promise behind it both more important and maybe more fragile. So the next time you hear people talking about inflation, don't just think about prices. Ask yourself, how strong is that shared story we're all telling each other about our money? And what exactly is holding it all together?